Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Xsolla sessions. We're thrilled to have you with us today. We've got an exciting panel on emerging markets, so we're going to welcome the speakers to the stage. Rytis, over to you.
Not sure about my sunglasses.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to what I think is probably one of the most interesting conversations happening in GDC this year. Not because emerging markets are something new, but because the story has fundamentally changed, I believe. And so I wanted to start the session by framing it. And I have 4 points really to frame. 22 billion, that's the size of the MENA market that's projected to be by 2029. It's currently growing at about 10% annually. And it's the fastest clip of any gaming region in the world. Saudi Arabia alone accounts for over 40% of that. And over 380 million people across the region play games today. And this is not a market to watch for from a distance anymore, I believe. Building on that, 6.7 billion, that's how many times mobile games have been built in Vietnam and have been downloaded globally. That's more than China, more than the United States, and more than Turkey. Vietnam is now the world's leading exporter of mobile games. Just last week, Xsolla completed the acquisition of Rytis Corporation and became the first licensed merchant of record for games in the country. And that didn't really happen by accident. Building on that, I would like to move over to Azerbaijan, Baku. We currently have over 50 people that are currently working in our Baku office today. An office that didn't really exist 18 months ago. And that office is now Azerbaijan's third R&D gaming center for gaming infrastructure. The first international gaming incubation program in the country has already put 10 teams through mentorship with 45 to follow. And Azerbaijani government is directly co-investing in the outcome. So I wanted to introduce myself before I pass it to our panelists. I work on this pretty much on a day-to-day basis. I'm Rytis Joseph Jan, Senior Vice President of Global Strategic Initiatives and Government Relations here at Xsolla. And I can tell you, the reason that these markets matter is not just because of their size, it's the structure and the infrastructure that they carry. Each of these regions have governments that want to build something. They have the necessary talent pools, a hungry and underutilized player base, and an excessively demanding market. When those three forces align, you get a window. The question is whether the industry is equipped to tackle it and take that opportunity. So today's session is about not high-level optimism. You can get that anywhere. What I'd like to focus on today is getting into the mechanics of what government collaboration actually looks like in these emerging markets, how you build gaming ecosystems, how you go from scratch, and how publishers and platforms should think about sequencing markets when the opportunity costs are ever rising, not to do so. So I'm joined today by three very talented people. Amaani Shams, VP of Global Strategic Partnerships at Xsolla, and one of the architects of our commercial strategy across MENA. Following on, I have Tuan, CEO and co-founder of Ocean Entertainment, a Vietnamese leading esports and digital entertainment organization, and Fuad Karimov, our managing director of Baku R&D office.
Thank you.
Welcome, gentlemen and ladies. I'll start off with Wang. I'll start off with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is often lumped in with the Caucasus and Central Asia region in a way that flattens what's actually different about it. IDDA, and you've closely worked with IDDA, has been moving fast. Incubation programs, tech parks, R&D investments, international partnerships. In your view, what made Azerbaijan ready for this kind of a serious engagement right now, and what would have made this conversation impossible almost 5 years ago? I remember when I came to Baku just 2 years ago, and we had similar conversations. So,
thank you very much. Very happy to be here with a fellow panelist, and this really important topic. I think you correctly mentioned that by the time you came, the market started growing, and there were a community coming together. Some of the catalysts of that were the gaming events. So the Game Summit was a big success already for a few years. But particularly, I want to mention that in 2024, when you also came with a great team of yourself, Toli, to Azerbaijan, and that was a really good signal from the leader's perspective, from the Xsolla, because Xsolla has already a fantastic success across the region. It knows the consumers, it knows how the market grows, and coming to the region and meeting with state agencies help the company and help the local companies and the studios to grow, and through some different programs that Xsolla conducted, particularly incubation program that you mentioned, the plans with the Xsolla Academy and so on. So that was a really kind of changing point for local gaming industry.
Amaani, I think we've seen exponential growth coming out of the MENA region. We've seen the rise of Saudi Arabia's 2030 vision. We've seen what's happening in the Emiratis and how they're heavily investing and trying to transition really from an oil-based economy into a digital infrastructure economy. Where do you think the region is heading? We've seen the desire to build cultural IP and go beyond that. And also, we've seen esports as a growing factor in the industry, and specifically for the region.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me first, Rytis, and really honored to be here with all the gentlemen here across the globe. I mean, you said it, Fuad, it's a pretty hot topic. The emerging markets is not just where it's emerging, but it's where things are taking place. And I think, specifically when it comes to MENA, it's not just a growth market. It's a mandate that's backed behind sovereign capital, national vision, and a generation of gamers who essentially hadn't had an industry built for them. So that's where it's headed. And what makes it MENA different is not just the money, but the political will, just as you mentioned, and the cultural hunger for developers and all the mechanisms to come. Honestly, I think that the misunderstanding of where it's headed is around just the government involvement. But as I mentioned, there's quite a bit of a audience there that's hungry to be fed through the gaming developers. And while we're still learning the ecostructure and the ecosystem of the space and building around that, every region we've entered, someone else has shaped, and we're actually fortunate to go in there and help shape it ourselves. So while they have things coming up, we're there to lend a hand to really help its growth.
Tuan, I wanted to lean into this topic on emerging markets, and I think what Vietnam has pulled off is something remarkable, becoming the world's #1 mobile game exporter, with still relatively low APRU domestic market. And you've been in the middle of the story for over a decade, right? For a publisher or investor looking at Vietnam from the outside, what's the narrative that's driving this on the market? And we know Vietnam has this phenomenally large young population, I think over 50 million gamers, ready to play video games. So perhaps we could lean into some of your expertise.
Yeah, hello everybody. Vietnam is often underestimated until people look at the data. I can, from the data perspective, Vietnam is a very unique market. In the popular, Vietnam currently have a popular dance 100 million people, and around 55% for the popular user internet. And roughly 70 user use a smartphone. It also one of the youngest people popular in the Southeast Asia, with a median age about 32. And today, Vietnam around 58 million gamers. Wow. And most of them, the mobile is the first player. Mobile gaming account approximately 70 and 75% of total revenue gaming industries. However, from the outside, many people still view Vietnam as a larger AIPU market. And therefore, some for the opportunity here are limited. In reality, the brief perspective do not fully respect what Vietnam actually represents. Vietnam not just a consumer market. In many ways, it has become the global production hub for the mobile game. I can't take example. Vietnam have many studio and many programmer famous. You know that's Flappy Bird game.
Yes.
I think everybody do know.
Yes.
And I see Infinity.
Yes.
Yeah. So over the past decades, Vietnam game developers built an international reputation for the mobile game design. Rytis develops a cycle, a highly efficient production team. They help Vietnam become the world's #1 export mobile game by downloads. So really the story of Vietnam gaming industry grow driven by global export from very beginning. Many Vietnamese studios learning design game for the global markets, not just within the gaming industries. Vietnam currently hundreds studio and thousand programmer, developer, and with a young and dynamic workforce that's already experienced to build product for the global audience.
I think from that, I'd really like to deep dive into what is it like working in public and government institutions. You know, I think over the last number of years at Xsolla, one thing is I've learned from doing this work is that emerging markets, especially, and the government is never just a regulator, right? It's often a co-builder of the entire ecosystem. In Azerbaijan, IDDA has been a direct partner in building the gaming ecosystem, from accelerators, incubators, to running company events, and even providing supports for companies seeking to relocate. In Vietnam, we've seen the regulatory framework is, I guess, at the moment, one of the most complex barriers for any international publisher trying to enter, right? But in MENA, the government is backed by initiatives like Saudi Arabia's Savvy Games Group, who are reshaping the investment landscape and the sector, what it looks like, especially for the region. So I'd like to deep dive into some of these mechanics. And Fuad, for you, I think you're a lot in the room with some of these decision makers, especially on the government side. So when Xsolla and IDDA designed the incubation package, when we looked at what it takes to build an ecosystem from scratch and from the ground up, I think together we've trained over 90 developers, running mentorship and providing global experts for the country, as well as cash grants and everything else. What do you think the government needs to see before committing working from private to public sector? And what's the model that actually works when a global company wants to work with a public agency versus a model that looks good on paper but doesn't really apply in the real business world? I think the way I look at it is you get an MBA from a nice prestigious school, but turns out the business world is a little bit more complicated than in theory.
I think what's important was here is that government for recent years has been considering how to diversify the economy and make it more digital revenue generated ecosystem. And as I mentioned earlier, when the gaming community started growing and there were different gaming events, and Xsolla as being a success story globally, coming to the country, seeing the potential in the local studios, whether it's a small studios or more mature indie games particularly, they could offer a very practical incubation program to accelerate their development, monetization. That's what we needed, because some of them were successful locally, but to come to the global stage, that's where Xsolla empowers its partners, empowers its games. And 2024, when you came with a team and basically could share your experience across the broader region, and there was a success stories already in Central Asia, in MENA region, let alone in the Western markets. And that, when the incubation program followed by that in 2025 was a big success. Out of this program, there was already local success stories and global revenue generating company studios. And that already signaled to IDDA, the Innovation and Digital Development Agency, the state agency which drives this development, to ensure that Xsolla is the right partner who we should work for years to come, and that will be in building the engineering capacities that you mentioned earlier. And that's about the academy, which Xsolla has already rolled out as a success stories, and particularly the incubation and acceleration with a global network of mentors and practitioners that Xsolla has. So this created a synergy that state agency looked for, and Xsolla became that right partner at the right time.
So do you think when we're trying to build ecosystems from the ground up, first you build the foundations or the framework, provide the studios with the necessary supports, and private sector can only do so much, right, in any market. And I think what IDDA and the commitment that they've shown to the country is quite phenomenal. But we've seen this across other emerging markets from MENA as well in terms of oil-producing countries. Outside of the capital contribution that a government can make, Tuan, I really want to switch into the regulatory side. Vietnam has been known as a framework is increasingly complex. Publishers need government-mandated licenses, content approval, local publishing agreements, etc. And I think you've navigated that terrain across a portfolio of, I think, roughly 50 products that you guys currently operate. For an international publisher who's done everything right, commercially is now starting looking at Vietnam as a potential market, what are some of the practical advice that you could give them? And where do you see the government moving over the next couple of years on making it easier for developers and publishers coming in from markets like the United States, Europe, APAC, Latin America, China, and so forth?
Yes, it is important to understand that Vietnam, the rapidly growing gaming markets. The Vietnam gaming market currently generates approximate 600 to 700 million now the revenue, and many projects suggest that it could approve 1 billion in the next few years. With an now the growth gets rate of around 8 to 10%. 10%, yeah. And alongside this growth to community of 58 million gamers, most of them play a mobile device. Because the scale and the growth are very fast in industries, Vietnam also develops a trusted, regular framework to the manage the game sector. In truth, that is a legal legal environment for gaming in Vietnam, often described as complex. However, that complexity also reflects a structure and a stable regulatory system. And if internal publishing entering Vietnam, I usually offer three practical pieces of advice. The first, partner with a strong local partner. The second, incorporate the regulatory planning into your operation roadmap from the beginning. And the third, build long-term relationship within in the markets. And in the gaming industry, is currently regulated by the Ministries of Information and Communication with a legal framework such as the G1, G2, G3, G4 game classification system. Decrease the 72 online game management. I can use OZ case. My company, we have a OZ game. Last year, we opened 10 game title, and that's with us with success often a local publishing license. And this year, we have a plan open the 20 game title. And we will see the growth. I believe that in the coming year, we will see the getting gradually and the modernization in regular framework, particularly and the Vietnam continue to integrate more deeply into the global digital economy.
I think building on what you said, I think we've seen Vietnam taking proactive steps also on the CTPP agreement in terms of allowing more foreign direct investment in specific sectors. And I think you're right when it comes to finding a local partner that knows the insides of the market. And to that effect, I think I'd like to ask Amaani you a question. MENA has become a region where the relationship between government, telcos, and the private sector is increasingly becoming intertwined. Saudi Arabia's esport investments, UAE's free zone infrastructure, Egypt's digital wallet push, etc. And so Xsolla has been trying to build using this context, adding multiple payment gateways like CTC Pay, Vodafone, and so forth, and carrier billing across the region. How do you think about which government or institutional relationships to prioritize, especially as you spend a lot of your time on the ground talking to these, whether it's the free trade zones, the telco partners, or even our own publishers and the folks that license the games, right?
Yeah. I mean, MENA has either an institutional relationship, which can change the transaction ultimately, right? It could just generate announcements and you know which that looks like earlier. So whether your counterparts are about communication or you're heading towards a photo op, that's essentially what you're going to get in certain relationships. And the bigger kind of goal and understanding of a true partner, whether it's government or whether it's a private, is really aligning on your KPIs. And understanding that from the beginning could really save you a lot of times in these conversations. Just prioritizing or thinking about how to enter a market. You mentioned Saudi. For institutional depth there, the vision of 2030 essentially is a kind of capital approach, right? And when we think of UAE, they're entering more on a financial, infrastructure. They're looking to build that, and that's their biggest priority. Where Egypt, their focus is more of the payment rails and their coverage there. So by measuring all of these and really kind of taking into account which way to approach and enter a market, that will change the approach and the selection of a partner. I don't think that any one region or any one territory in the region, I should say, is identical to the other.
Thank you. I think I've seen over the years that wherever we've gone, whether it's Baku, whether it's Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, Riyadh, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or anywhere in MENA, I think what we've seen is governments can build the building, they can fund the incentives, but the ecosystem doesn't necessarily show up on cue. There's always been this mentality of build it and they will come. And we've seen it in the startup world and we've seen it on the government level, and doesn't necessarily always work out. And talent pipelines take years. Communities form around trust, culture, not press releases and MOU signings and those various types of announcements. So I wanted to sort of really look into what you've seen actually work in your respective regions. I think what I would like to talk is Tuan. OAG is Vietnam's leading esports organization. You've built talent infrastructure, the content ecosystem necessary to support it, and the professional pathway for streamers, gamers, and studios. Looking back, I guess, at what actually moved the needle on creating a real gaming community in Vietnam over the years, not just an audience. And we know Vietnam has been advancing, like I said, 50 million gamers. That's half the population of Vietnam playing video games. It's a phenomenal number. So you've managed to build a really sustainable industry ecosystem where there's 2 or 3 decisions on programs that... So my question to you is, what are the 2 or 3 decisions that you've made over the last couple of years that matter the most? And what do you wish you've done earlier? And maybe some of the obstacles you wish you had avoided?
Okay. One skill lesson we learned that that's the community always comes before motivation. And look back at usually the building to the game ecosystem at the Ocean Entertainment Group. There were the three major decisions. That's a great turning point. The first, we invest in physical gaming place. In Vietnam, we build largest scale gaming and esport venue sagas. We have a two-layer. Layer one, we have a OEZ Stadium. OEZ Stadium is a esport complex. That's 4,000 mirror. 4,000 mirror. And layer two, OEZ Cyber Hub. OEZ Cyber Hub, the first cyber gaming center in Vietnam that's integrated a mini-mark concept. In mini-mark, we sell snack, toy, figure, and gaming gear for the gamer. Today, the OEZ Gaming Center system includes 6 locations, welcoming over 250,000 customers per year. And Respect have become culture hub for the gaming community. And the second, we invest in the community event. In the Vietnam, one example, the National Student Open Cup, NSOC 2025. The largest nationwide Unity eSport tournament organized by OEZ. The tournament achieved 50 million reach, 32,000 student participants, and 5,000 competitive players, 170 universities involved. Wow. Even like this help gaming become the integrated part of young culture. And NSOC current the largest community eSport tournament in Vietnam. And the third, we invest in talent development. Human capital is one of the most important factors in the building a sustainable gaming and eSport ecosystem. For example, we make the OEZ Academy project is a talent develops initiative and the trend for the support gaming and the professionals such as streamer, caster, eSport referral, content creator. And currently, OEZ collaborator with more than 300 talent and KOL, and also partner with the university to develop future talent for the gaming industry. And if we have had invest early, in the strong building, I want to invest a strong greater ecosystem. From talent development to content production and media platform, and the community might have a grow faster and deeper. Because it makes a game maker start as a technology product, but for the industry to truly thrive, it must become part of culture.
Rytis, just an interesting point. I mean, I see so many parallels across the regions, right? Granted, we're very much different stages.
Yes.
But you said a good point in the beginning in regards to focusing kind of on your audience and the developers. And I think what's being often missed in places like MENA, for example, is that we dive pretty deep into relationships with the government. And we're not building trust with necessarily the developers. And that is kind of a missed opportunity as we continue to build that ecosystem, right? And I'm sure you guys have had a similar experience and pivoted or learned from it, and now we're here. But it is something I think to note for at least MENA, as I continue to explore it, there are things collectively that we can learn from each other as we continue to build in those areas.
Thanks, Amaani. And going back to your point in terms of human capital, I think for what we've seen in Baku, especially on the ADA program, on the first cohort we ran in 2025, I believe, 10 teams were brought in with 3 months of mentorship, etc. But what I really want to focus in on is, and what I really want to push is this idea of sustainability. What does it take to go from a first cohort to a pipeline of cohorts to a series so the talent exists there for the future? When we're looking at some of these emerging markets, and we're talking about how do we attract foreign direct investment into the region, how do we attract studios to build and come from other regions and see it as a viable place to invest not only capital but also build the necessary infrastructure, right? So there has to be a place where you say we've built something that will outlast the launch momentum, right? And so I really want to get your opinion on what is Baku's vision, what is IDDA's vision, what's the government's plan in terms of how do you go from not having developers to having world-class developers that are ready to support the demand from developers that are either, whether they're domestic developers that are starting out or international companies seeking to relocate to Azerbaijan?
Yes, you correctly mentioned at the beginning, like a few years ago, we didn't even have, say, or maybe expected the success that Xsolla and IDDA partnership could demonstrate over the last year. And particularly, the big point was that the incubation program, which selected out of dozens of the local studios, 10 studios, and we're also happy to say that some already performing on international level. We have a dynamic box also here, like one of the participants, Shaheen, who was one of the prize winners in the incubation program, and now also was their studio was selected for Xsolla GDC scholarship program. So that's also another, basically shows the quality of the incubation program that Xsolla does. And it always takes into consideration localization. It helps to studios to understand how to scale up globally and make sure that's what IDDA, the state agency, is looking from this partnership. Because you correctly mentioned there are infrastructure that government can provide. They provide the techno-park license, which helps you with work permits from the foreign studios, with a tax regime. But at the end of the day, there should be a company like Xsolla who knows the global market, who can navigate the local studios to become a global leader and seek for that global success. So that's the synergy and the success recipe of the partnership. And back also to Tuan's point is community is a key. And we as Xsolla in Baku do as often as at least once a month a community building and discussing with developers, as you mentioned. It's about the game studios so they can network between each other, share success, and bring a professional from Xsolla global different with global experience to come and tell him and empower. So I mean, this week we'll have ladies in gaming, for example. That will be a big event conducted. So we have people from coming just from Kuala Lumpur sharing their experience. And this is how it's important that working with government, but what Xsolla does particularly well is also engaging the community.
That's a really interesting point. And I think MENA has a very different set of challenges. It has the player base and the community base, but I think lacks core infrastructure. So, Amaani, I think one of the consistent challenges we've seen across MENA and the region is the gap between player appetite and monetizable engagement, right? So 67% of the region's population is currently underbanked. APRU in markets like Egypt is a fraction of what it is in the UAE. And that's not really just a payments problem, it's an ecosystem problem. Because how should global publishers, especially if you're coming from the United States, you're coming in from Europe or different markets, how should they think about investing in infrastructure that doesn't immediately monetize? Localization is another issue. Local studio partnerships. And I think my question to you is, what signals would tell you that the ecosystem investment is actually compounding? And how could some of those international developers and publishers either tap into local partners to tackle some of those obstacles and challenges? Or is this more of a state issue to solve, or a combination of the two?
I mean, I think that's a very interesting question, and it comes up quite a bit. But I have to say that the big misunderstanding is that there is a gap.
Yeah.
Essentially, there is an infrastructure already there. There's players there, the wallets are ready, and people are ready to play. So the real gap is trust.
Okay.
I think that is a key element that we keep revisiting, and really establishing that could, take us a long way. Developers don't trust MENA players will to monetize at scale, but the base is not the product. It's actually understanding, where they're at. And you said something really interesting is localization, which maybe is the issue, and pricing is not correct, and there's never been a market for the audience. But ultimately, the measure of this is lacked or kind of misguided because nobody's ever been there, and to understand it is to understand the ceiling when you can actually serve it. So while folks are still learning the region, learning the players, learning the environment, I think the leaps are being taken before understanding all of those elements.
Very valid points, and I think we're coming up on time, so I'm going to be very quick with my last two questions for the panel here. I really want to look at choosing a market and what that sequencing looks like. So if you're a mid-sized publisher with really one shot at an emerging market, expansion for this year, limited bandwidth, regulatory risk, your CFO is asking the hard questions about payback periods, how do you choose, all that funny stuff that goes into thinking it, right? You go to MENA, Southeast Asia versus Eurasia, Saudi Arabia before Egypt, Vietnam before Indonesia, all these questions come up, right? So what I really want to hear from each of you is, how do you think about the sequencing logic? And Amaani, I want to start with you. You advise publishers and platforms on this every single day. You walk us through the decision framework you'd actually use if I was a emitter publisher. When a publisher says, MENA, what do you tell them about where to start, how to stage the investment? Maybe there's a lack of cultural understanding, and I think that's
Absolutely.
one of the biggest issues. Certainly, I've seen when I was coming into the region 4 years ago or so.
Yeah, well, I usually start with saying, let's stop saying MENA, because MENA is not one place. It's essentially many places, and each of them operate very differently. And there is lots to think about as you think about MENA. So it's 5 different bets per se. It's not just one market. But if you want to start in one place, we can start in Saudi Arabia. And while they have spending power there, and the infrastructure is there, and the government is there, it's easier to justify internally to enter, right? It's a hot spot, right? But then you think about, the players and their way of finding games and where they drop off. Is it payments? Is it payment drop-offs due to infrastructure? Is it cost? Is it the onboarding dropouts? Is it localization fixes that we need to think about? So all of these conversations I tend to, bring back to the publisher when they think about entering MENA. But the answer is, where do you invest first, right? And I would say the mistake I see a lot is that the sequence is mostly around announcing before understanding the ecosystem and the infrastructure. They land on a regional partnership, they get really excited, there's some press release, they do the discovery, the checkout. It's still about a great idea of maybe 60% of the audience they can tag on. I mean, the thoughts keep going, but it's about flipping it and really fixing it and thinking about the transaction first before the story. So I advise publishers who want to enter that market to really think about that transaction before building on their game.
Thank you very much. I'm going to dive right in since we're very limited on time. Let's try and keep it to a minute or two on the answer side so we can do a closing session. Tuan, Vietnam presents a really interesting sequencing opportunity. Simultaneously, it's become this production hub producing the most mobile games anywhere in the world. At the same time, it's a really emerging consumer market, 50 million gamers. Half the population plays video games, which you've never seen anywhere in any other market, right? So a publisher entering Vietnam today would come in as potentially a distributor of global titles, or as a co-developer working local studios, or maybe even both. So how should they think about which door to walk through, and what sort of challenges they should really be aware of entering the market?
Okay. For most international publisher, I usually recommend step-by-step market entry strategy. Stand by partnering with the local studio through core development, outsourcing, and publishing partnership. This allows you better understand the market, talent pool, and the geography environment. Once you have built a foundation, you can expand into direct publishing and a deeper ecosystem investment. The company that success in Vietnam are the typically through the build a relationship first and scale later.
Yeah. Thank you. Fuad, Azerbaijan has a sort of a geographic and strategic position that's often currently underplayed. It sits at the intersection of Europe, Russia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, right, in the sort of CAS states. And it has a sort of a long bilateral relationship across all of those geographies. So for publishers thinking about the broader Eurasia opportunity, how do you think Azerbaijan functions as a test and learn environment, or maybe more as a regional gateway?
So historically, if we go back to the history, Azerbaijan was, as you correctly mentioned, geographically positioned, and we used to call it on the Silk Road, between Asia and Europe. And we were proud that it was later converted into different capabilities, like in relating to the natural resources, about the transit routes, and so on. And now Baku sees the opportunity to become a digital hub and digital channel. And this was one of the strategic decisions also for Xsolla to establish an R&D hub in Baku, and that could also serve a broader region. And we also plan to have, hopefully, opportunity to attract in Azerbaijan studios, publishers, different suppliers or tier one vendor, like companies who are also within that broader gaming industry. And I also like the fact that when Xsolla comes to the market, they also identify a right partner to work with. And I'm not talking about just the government. That was a success story in the first place, because Xsolla has something to offer, and there is a synergy with the government. At the same time, what I have observed also from your previous project, Rytis, also that, in whether it's in Malaysia, South Korea, other countries where there is the industry is growing, the ability to identify the local partner who is also passionate about what they do. Whether that was a Game Summit or StarNest, who can build also the academic capabilities. And that's important success factor as well in growing that industry.
Amazing. So I'm going to do a quick closing question for us all. I asked that you guys keep your questions to a minute or so, your answers. So the last question I have is I want to give everyone a little bit of a chance to dream, backed by evidence. 5 years from now, if everything goes right in your respective markets, what does success look like? Not for Xsolla, not for any single company, but for the entire ecosystem and the region you guys represent, for the local studios on the ground, for the players and so forth. Tuan, I'll start with you. Vietnam is already probably one of the largest mobile game exporters by downloads. In 5 years, what's the version of Vietnam's gaming industry that turns raw output into global IP? You've mentioned Flappy Birds before. Are we talking about global studios, global brands? And what has to happen between now and the next 5 years for that to happen?
Okay, to do this, I think this will require 3 key factors. The first, a Vietnam studio must create the original IP that can recognize worldwide. This requires deeper investment in the talent across multi-role, not only programmer, but also game designer, narrative creator, like operations specialist, global products leader. And the second, Vietnam company needs to develop the global publishing and operation capability. This will allow them to move beyond being police development and become global gamer operation. The third, the esport and the gaming entertainment ecosystem must continue go grow. Their system was a transfer game into long-term global brand. If the three elements come together, Vietnam will evolve from being known as a powerhouse of game production into become a true global gaming hub.
Amazing. Fuad, 30 seconds or less. In 5 years, what does Azerbaijan look like if the bets IDDA and the government, various different government agencies are making, they actually pay off in terms of studio, export, talent, and regional influence? Do you see Azerbaijan as becoming a regional hub rather than just a local player?
So if I may, I'll talk about the economical metrics. So there was one important change recently is that establishment of the governing body led by the vice president of the country in order to empower the digital economy. So my hope that in 5 years, 20% of our economy comes from the digital revenue.
Amaani, MENA 3, it's projected to reach quite significant levels of revenue. I think it's 2.8 billion by 2029. In 5 years, what version of MENA actually is successful? What's changes beyond the actual revenue number? And what does the publisher landscape look like? We looked at that we do indeed have a very hungry player base and quite a significant number at that too. I believe 380 million.
Yeah.
What does the local studio scene look like? And what role like players like Xsolla play in building those ecosystems?
Yeah. I think in 5 years, the revenue number is not going to be as interesting, but more so the publisher landscape. That's going to look drastically different. And I think once we start to look at it and MENA starts to become more as a starter to build and not just a port, thinking about Arabic first, thinking about localization, thinking about real stories, thinking about regions, developers, districts, and areas that will basically give creators a voice. I think that's where the shift is really going to come. Xsolla will play a big role, and I imagine to be part of that role. So not just in framing, the infrastructure or having visibility, but having ideal goals for the region and making a unique stance in the global ecosystem for MENA. And I say it even though I told the publishers not to, but taking that stance and really kind of identifying a space for it. Overall, the cross-border payment issues, we want to make that seamless and make that an opportunity where folks over there are dealing with nothing, just like us here in California or in the States. I think what actually matters, or what I should say doesn't matter, isn't the $2.8 billion, but it's the first MENA-originated games that will break kind of the global idea of the region.
Thank you, Ab. And just to summarize, I think what really strikes me about this conversation today that we've had from our three wonderful panelists is that each of these markets is proving out of a different thesis of how gaming ecosystems are actually built. Vietnam proves that export-led growth is real, that you can build world-class creative output in a market where domestic ARPU is still low, and that the community precedes the monetization. Azerbaijan proves that government intent, when it's backed by real institutional architecture and real private sector partnerships, can compress a decade of ecosystem development into a short few years. And MENA proves to me that the scale of audience is not enough, and that markets with the most passionate players can still be the hardest to monetize. And that infrastructure work, payments, localization, cultural differences, regulatory navigation issues is the actual competitive moat that exists. And I think at Xsolla, we've made significant bets in all of those three markets, whether it's Baku, Vietnam, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. I can keep listing more and more countries. Not because we think every single bet is going to pay off on the same timeline, but because we believe the window is now open and the cost of waiting is not zero. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Amaani, Tuan, and Fuad, for being here and for making more than the panel today with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Xsolla.